This isn't just a channel. It's a reckoning. Welcome to Family Vendetta 18, where the ones they called failures become legends. If your own family ever doubted you, silenced you, or made you feel like you weren't enough, you belong here. Because on this channel, we don't beg for seats at their table. We build our own empires, one story at a time. The message lit up my phone like a spark on dry paper. Family reunion this Saturday. Please don't bring Ava. We don't need any more disappointments in the group photo. I stared at the screen, then out the floor-to-ceiling window of my executive suite overlooking downtown Springfield. 12 years ago, those words would have broken me. Today they just made me smile. Because the reunion venue they'd so proudly bragged about on Facebook. Monroe Field. The sleek, multi-million-dollar stadium glowing right across the river. That wasn't a rental. It was mine. 10 years ago I was Ava the nanny, the dropout, the girl who turned down law school and cleaned gym mats for a living. To them I was the family shame, the one who threw her life away to run around with sweaty kids instead of wearing a suit. They didn't ask what came next. They never cared. They didn't know I built a youth sports empire from scratch. They had no idea the Monroe in Monroe Field wasn't coincidence. It was legacy. And this weekend, they were about to walk into my legacy. Without even knowing whose name they were standing on. I wasn't always Ava Monroe, CEO. Long before the spotlights and stadium banners, I was just the girl who didn't belong. At 24, I dropped out of law school 2 semesters before graduation. Not because I wasn't smart enough, but because I couldn't breathe in a life I didn't choose. My mother cried. My father didn't speak to me for 6 months. My Aunt Claire told everyone I had mental instability. They all agreed I was wasting potential. I took a job no one in my family would ever touch, cleaning locker rooms at a rundown community sports center on the east side of Springfield, mopping sweat, grubbing cleats, and for the first time I felt alive. There was something sacred about watching kids light up on the court. Many of them came from homes like mine. Tight-lipped households, high pressure, zero space to fail. I connected with them, coached them, believed in them when no one else did. I started saving. Every paycheck. Took online classes in sports management. Volunteered for extra shifts. Lived in the back storage room for 6 months to avoid rent. Then came the break. A shuttered warehouse listed for next to nothing. I used every cent of my savings and maxed out 2 credit cards to lease it. I painted the walls myself. Found used equipment on Craigslist. My first center was a half-court gym with a squeaky floor and a busted AC system. They laughed at it. My cousin Brielle once called it Ava's daycare for delinquents. But within a year we had waiting lists. Within 2, I applied for a small business development grant. By year 3, we opened Monroe Youth Athletics in 3 neighborhoods. My family never noticed, never asked. To them I was still Ava the dropout, Ava the babysitter, Ava who embarrassed the family name. They didn't know about the kids I mentored who got college scholarships. Or the parents who called me crying because their children had found confidence. Or the award I got from the state for community impact. They didn't know I was building something they couldn't measure with degrees or status. And that was fine. Because real change happens in silence, while everyone else is looking the other way. Fast forward 10 years, and Monroe Field now sits at the heart of Springfield's sports revival. The state funded half of it. Private donors came pouring in. Even the mayor came to the ribbon cutting. But not a single Monroe relative showed up. They hadn't been invited. And when they unknowingly booked their family reunion at the stadium bearing my name, I didn't say a word. I just smiled and prepared for their arrival. Because the same hands that once scrubbed sweat off concrete had built the floor they'd now be walking on. I wasn't always Ava Monroe, CEO. Long before the spotlights and stadium banners, I was just the girl who didn't belong. At 24, I dropped out of law school 2 semesters before graduation. Not because I wasn't smart enough, but because I couldn't breathe in a life I didn't choose. My mother cried. My father didn't speak to me for 6 months. My Aunt Claire told everyone I had mental instability. They all agreed I was wasting potential. I took a job no one in my family would ever touch, cleaning locker rooms at a rundown community sports center on the east side of Springfield, mopping sweat, grubbing cleats, and for the first time I felt alive. There was something sacred about watching kids light up on the court. Many of them came from homes like mine, tight-lipped households, high pressure, zero space to fail. I connected with them, coached them, believed in them when no one else did. I started saving every paycheck, took online classes in sports management, volunteered for extra shifts, lived in the back storage room for 6 months to avoid rent. Then came the break. A shuttered warehouse listed for next to nothing. I used every cent of my savings and maxed out 2 credit cards to lease it. I painted the walls myself. Found used equipment on Craigslist. My first center was a half-court gym with a squeaky floor and a busted AC system. They laughed at it. My cousin Brielle once called it Ava's daycare for delinquents. But within a year we had waiting lists. Within 2, I applied for a small business development grant. By year 3, we opened Monroe Youth Athletics in 3 neighborhoods. My family never noticed, never asked. To them I was still Ava the dropout, Ava the babysitter, Ava who embarrassed the family name. They didn't know about the kids I mentored who got college scholarships, or the parents who called me crying because their children had found confidence, or the award I got from the state for community impact. They didn't know I was building something they couldn't measure with degrees or status. And that was fine, because real change happens in silence, while everyone else is looking the other way. Fast forward 10 years, and Monroe Field now sits at the heart of Springfield's sports revival. The state funded half of it. Private donors came pouring in. Even the mayor came to the ribbon cutting. But not a single Monroe relative showed up. They hadn't been invited. And when they unknowingly booked their family reunion at the stadium bearing my name, I didn't say a word. I just smiled and prepared for their arrival. Because the same hands that once scrubbed sweat off concrete had built the floor they'd now be walking on. I walked slowly, deliberately, my sneakers echoing against the concrete. The light from the field widened as I stepped out of the tunnel and onto the grass. 40 pairs of eyes turned toward me, squinting into the spotlight that illuminated the center of Monroe Field. I didn't say a word at first. I let them take me in. The uniform, badge, the woman they'd disinvited from nearly every family event for over a decade. My mother gasped audibly. My father stiffened. Brielle whispered something to Aunt Claire, her voice shaking with disbelief. Ava! My father finally managed. What is this? I took my place in the center of the field, next to the lone chair. In my hand was a binder, thick, clean, and full of receipts, emails, texts, group chat screenshots, every dismissal, every insult, every exclusion. I looked around and said, quietly but clearly, "You didn't want me at the reunion. That's fine. But you might want to know, this is my field." Monroe Field wasn't named after some legacy donor. It was named after the girl you all gave up on. Murmurs spread like wildfire. "That's impossible," Aunt Claire said, almost to herself. I opened the binder. Mom, 2012. She's throwing away her life. Watch, she'll be working at a gas station before she's 30. Brielle, 2015. She's not family anymore. We can't let her embarrass us in front of clients. Dad, 2016. You walk out that door, Ava, you walk away from this family. Pause. Well, I did walk out that door. And I walked into something better. Something mine. I pointed up toward the stadium lights. This is what failure built. This is what you couldn't see coming because you were too busy watching your own reflection. Brielle stepped forward, her face flushed. So you're, what, getting revenge? I met her eyes. No, I'm teaching a lesson. That the people you dismiss on your way up may just be the ones controlling the elevator later. My father stepped closer. Ava, we didn't know. He nodded. Exactly. You didn't know because you never asked. You didn't care to. I wasn't the version of success you could brag about at country clubs. I turned to Julian, who stood off-field with security staff. Escort them out, please. Their reservations have been cancelled. And the reunion. Consider it relocated. To humility. My mother looked like she might faint. My father didn't argue. And as they were guided out, one by one, I remained in the light. Powerful in the uniform they once saw as shameful. They walked out beneath my name. And for the first time, they finally knew what it meant. The stadium was quiet after they left. No more muttering. No high heels clacking. No forced laughter. Just silence. And the distant hum of the city beyond the walls I built. Julian approached slowly, still holding the radio in one hand. "You good?" he asked. I looked around at the empty field, the spotlight now dimmed. I've never been better. By Monday morning, the headlines had taken on a life of their own. CEO shocks family with stadium showdown. Ava Monroe turns years of rejection into unshakable empire. The field that raised her, from custodian to owner. Suddenly I wasn't invisible anymore. The mayor's office called. So did local news, state education officials, even national nonprofits. A law firm, ironically one my uncle helped start, asked if I'd consider joining their board for youth outreach. But the one envelope I didn't expect came by regular mail. Cream-colored. No return address. Inside, a note on crisp paper signed by my father. "You proved me wrong. I hope you'll consider taking your seat at the table again, with your head held high." Attached was a legal agreement offering me a seat on the Monroe Family Trust Board. I placed it back in the envelope. Then I slid it into a padded box alongside the name tag I wore that day and a handwritten note. "No thanks. I built my own table." A week later, I stood at the podium at Monroe Field, this time not in a uniform, but in a sleek navy blazer. The field was packed, not with family but with people who saw me, believed in me. We were launching the Monroe Rising Fund, a program dedicated to helping young women from overlooked backgrounds start their own businesses, athletic programs or nonprofits. I took a breath and looked out over the crowd. This place was never about revenge, I told them. It was about resilience. Applause roared back at me. I didn't build Monroe Field to prove my family wrong. I built it to prove that the version of success we were taught to chase is too small. True success lifts others. It doesn't ask for permission. And it sure as hell doesn't require a last name to matter. I left the stage to a standing ovation. That night, walking the stadium halls alone, I passed the wall where our staff hung their uniforms. At the very end, framed in glass, was mine. Monroe, youth coach. Underneath, a plaque read. She wasn't a mistake. She was the foundation. Success used to feel like a finish line. Like if I could just get one win, just one, I'd finally be enough. But standing on the upper deck of Monroe Field, watching kids from every corner of Springfield run drills, laugh and believe in themselves, I realized something deeper. Success isn't a destination. It's a platform. And I was building mine so others could stand taller. The Monroe Rising Fund took off faster than any of us predicted. We partnered with schools, shelters, youth centers. We created microgrants for young women who wanted to coach, start their own leagues, or build wellness programs in their neighborhoods. But I didn't just want to give money. I wanted to give belief, structure, mentorship. Every applicant sat through a one-on-one session. And in each one, I told a version of my story. Not the headlines. The real parts. I scrubbed bleachers. Slept in a supply closet. Ate instant noodles 6 nights a week. I wasn't born with a roadmap. I wrote one with sweat and stubbornness. They listened. Eyes wide. Some crying. Most nodded like they finally saw their own reflection in someone worth becoming. Julian, my right hand and oldest friend, started a leadership series for our staff. We called it Legacy Sessions. Every month, one team member shared their story. How they got here, what they overcame. At the end of each session, we gathered around that same old folding chair in the center of the field, under the spotlight. And one by one they sat in it. Not to be judged but to be celebrated. To reclaim the light for themselves. My family. Some still stayed distant. Others sent flowers. Polite texts. Half-hearted invitations to holiday dinners. I didn't hate them. But I no longer sought their approval either. I had new family now. The security guard whose daughter just got into college on a volleyball scholarship. The single mom who launched a girls' lacrosse team using our grant. The teen who used to show up angry and silent, and now runs her own weekend basketball clinic. These were my people. My purpose. Sometimes late at night when the stadium is empty, I walk the perimeter in my old uniform. Grounds me. Not out of nostalgia but reverence. For the girl they called a failure. For the woman she became. There's a power in remembering your beginning, especially when the world only sees your outcome. I no longer measure my worth in apologies I never received or seats I was denied. I measure it in every life we touch. Every story we rewrite. Every time someone says, "Because of you, I didn't give up." That's the kind of legacy they can't take from me. And one they'll never fully understand. Because I didn't just build a stadium. I built a movement. The night air at Monroe Field was cooler than usual. The crowd had thinned after the final panel of our youth summit, but I stayed behind, alone in the center of the turf. The stadium lights dimmed except for one. That same spotlight. That same folding chair. Julian had left it there like always. Symbol. Reminder. I walked over slowly. Sat down. Closed my eyes. 12 years ago, I'd have done anything for a seat at someone else's table. Now, I had built my own arena. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. You see, when people try to define you by your lowest moment, they're betting you'll stay there. When they laugh at your dream, they hope you'll shrink enough to make theirs look bigger. And when your own blood tells you, "You're not one of us," what they're really saying is, "You scare us." Because you won't stay small. But here's what they never saw coming. That the girl they mocked for cleaning gym floors would one day carve her name into the skyline. At the closing ceremony, I stood before 6,000 people. Athletes, coaches, students, parents, survivors. I used to think success was about proving them wrong, I said. Now I know, it's about proving that you were right all along. The applause wasn't loud. It was thunderous. And as I looked around at all the lives that had gathered inside the world I built, I felt something bigger than vindication. Felt purpose. I ended the night with one last walk around the stadium. Every hallway echoed with stories. Every wall bore the fingerprints of those who helped bring it to life. And every security guard, every janitor, every assistant, knew they were part of something bigger than a paycheck. They were part of a vision. The lights of Springfield twinkled beyond the windows. But the brightest light was right there, center field, where a single chair still stood under a beam of gold. And so, to anyone who's ever felt like they didn't belong, you do. To anyone who's been told to sit down, stay quiet, or play small, stand tall. And to every girl who's ever been called a failure for daring to dream differently, know this: you are not their mistake. You are your own miracle. Let them underestimate you. Let them whisper behind closed doors. And when your moment comes, walk into it in whatever uniform you wore at your lowest. Stand in the spotlight. Say nothing. And let your name do the talking. Ava Monroe's story isn't just about revenge. It's about reclaiming the narrative. She was dismissed, excluded, and told she was throwing her life away. All by the people who were supposed to love her the most. But she didn't argue. She didn't beg. She didn't shrink. She built. And that's the lesson. You don't need a title to matter. You don't need approval to rise. You just need the courage to keep going when no one claps for you. Sometimes the most powerful statements don't come from podiums. They come from the ones who walk back into the rooms they were told to leave, not to beg for a seat, but to own the building. You may not wear the fanciest uniform. But if you're wearing integrity, work ethic, and belief in yourself, you're already unstoppable. If you've ever been overlooked, by family, co-workers, or society, let this be your reminder. You're not defined by what they see. You're defined by what you build. Start small. Stay consistent. Take the job others look down on. Master it. Learn after hours. Network in silence. And when they say, "You don't belong," just smile. Because one day they may walk into a place with your name on it. Don't wait for them to believe in you. Believe in yourself loud enough that they can't ignore it anymore. And when that moment comes, stand tall. Wear the badge they once mocked. And let the spotlight show who you've always been. If you've ever been told, "You're a failure. You're embarrassing us. You don't belong," then you already understand what Ava Monroe stood for. Here on Family Vendetta 18, we don't just tell stories of redemption. We honor the ones who rose from nothing and came back to own everything. Subscribe now if you're done shrinking for anyone's approval. Hit the bell to join a movement where being underestimated is our superpower. Drop a comment below and tell us, when did they doubt you? And what did you build anyway? Because this isn't just Ava's story. It's yours. It's mine. It's ours. They called her a failure. Now they call her CEO. What will they call you when the lights turn on? Welcome to Family Vendetta 18, where comeback isn't a choice. It's a legacy.